Hey AP World, Time Machine Teacher here, Miss C, and tonight we are going to be looking at the DBQ for Unit 4. So when you get here, make sure that you access it down in the description. There's also the organizational tool that we use in the description as well. So just grab those so that you're ready to go. Also, when you get here, drop your name in the comments and where you're from so that I can welcome you and get you in here to this chat. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the DBQ for Unit 4. And if you need access to it, like I said before, it's down in the description. Also, the outline is down there. This is what the DBQ looks like. I will have it up on the screen for you tonight. And then your organizational tool is down there as well. So grab that so you can follow along with that. If you don't have it printed out, that's fine. Just grab a piece of paper if you'd rather write on a piece of paper, and you can kind of draw this DBQ organizer on there. Completely acceptable. All right, good morning. Good evening, I mean. Hello, Shun. How are you doing? Wan Ying, welcome back. Good to see you both. Miss you guys. All right, so like I said before, go ahead and grab the DBQ down there. I'm going to have it up here on the screen for you as well, so you may not need to actually have that. But you can have access to the organizer. You can either do that on your computer, or if it's easier, just do it by hand. Either one is fine. All right, well, let's get morning. Yeah, let's get going. Yeah, I know. Good morning. I was just reading your comment, and that's why I said, let's get morning. Anyway, it's been a long day. I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired today. Oh, well. Hi, Fatine. Welcome back. Good to see you. And, oh, okay, it's morning there. Where are you at, Shun? Let me know so we can welcome you in. And Fatine, where are you? I can't remember if you're here in Houston or if you're someplace else. So welcome, guys. So happy to have you tonight. We are looking at Unit 4, DBQ. And tonight I'm going to hopefully get you guys to work a little bit and figure out this information. I'm not going to give you all the answers because it's time to start, shifting in that direction. Real quick before we get started, I did find out some information about how they are going to grade the DBQ this year. And the bad news is we won't really know how they're going to grade it until they actually grade it. Because once they actually grade it, that's how they're going to decide how many how much everything is worth. And like, let's say you get like 5 points on the DBQ, they'll decide if that's going to be a 3 or a 4 or a 5 or however they're going to do it. So what you have to try to do is just get as many points as you possibly can. That's basically what that means. So that's why we're going to work really hard on figuring out every single point, watching your time. And as it gets closer, the AP College Board is going to put out a practice run that you guys can practice so that you can time yourself. You can also time yourself with the ones that we are working on as well, so you can kind of see where you're at on that. Okay, so Fatine is in Houston, okay? Yeah, I know. Well, what happened, Fatine? I said good morning. That was the problem. So I was confusing everybody. All right, guys, let's get started. Hi, Juan. Welcome in. Juan, if you're just joining us, the DBQ and the DBQ outline are in the description below. You can grab those there. All right, so I'm going to be looking over here a little bit sometimes because I have you guys on my TV screen as well. It helps me follow the comments a little easier. So just know that's why I'm looking over in that direction. Juan's in Santa Monica. Nice. Are you guys still on lockdown out there? I've never been to Santa Monica, but I definitely want to go. I love it out there. Hey, welcome in, Teresa. How's it going? Good to see you guys. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We are working on DBQ number 4. Here's your prompt. If you have any questions as I'm going through this, or if I'm going too fast, just let me know over in the comments and I'll make sure that I address those. All right, so the prompt is evaluate the extent to which rulers of the early modern era use similar methods in establishing their authority during the period of 1450 to 1750. So if you look at your organizer, the very first thing we need to figure out is this a comparison, a change in continuity, or a causation? So right here, it says the word similar. That's your clue that this is a comparison. Now, also keep in mind that to get that unicorn point, that last point for complexity, one of the ways you can do that is to talk about similarities and differences. So we might want to do that in order to get that complexity point if you can figure one out. But over here on your organizer, what you're going to put down is that this is a comparison or compare, okay? Then what are we comparing? Well, if you look back at the prompt, you can see you're comparing how rulers established their authority. So put that down in your organizer. How rulers established their authority. Basically, how did they get people to listen to them? And then our time period is 1450 to 1750. That's how you want to break down the prompt. Yes, this would definitely be land-based, also maritime-based empires. Both are at the same time frame. They just divide them up into two different units. Very good. All right, so let's look at your documents. We have document 1 here. This is a letter from Ogier Grislin de Bascuc or Baspic. I can't pronounce his name. He's a Flemish writer and an ambassador of the Austrian Empire to the Ottoman court of Solomon the Magnificent. So he is an outsider coming into the Ottoman court. And he says Solomon the Magnificent at one time tried persuasion on the Shah, the Safavid Shah, reminding him of the treaty, by which he had agreed they should both have the same friends and enemies, and at one another endeavored to frighten him with menacing language in threatening him with war. He had placed strong garrisons in all his towns on the Persian Safavid frontier and filled Mesopotamia and the banks of the Euphrates with soldiers who were taken for the most part from the imperial guard. He also, that's a typo, that should be sent. He also sent frequent messages to the tribes they called the Georgians, urging them to take up arms against the king of Persia. So if we were to describe this document, how would you describe it? What would you say about this document? Basically, what is the main idea? That's the very first thing that you're putting in your document organizer. If anyone would like to type that up real quick. Hi, NNE, come on in. We just started. This is what we've got on our DBQ organizer so far, if you want to just check that out. All right, so we need a description for the first one. If anybody wants to go for it, you can. I said this is basically Solomon, who is Ottoman, threatening the Shah with war to get him to obey the treaty. So, Solomon? And remember, the Shah of the Safavid Empire, they did not get along. Does anybody remember why they didn't get along? Drop it in the comments if you remember. That's my description. I'll give you a hint as to why they didn't get along. It has to do with religions. Does anybody remember now? I need to play Jeopardy in the background. Very good one. They were different religions. Yes, NNE. Yes, it was Sunni versus Shia. So they don't get along for that reason. That could be some outside evidence. So I'm going to put that down here so that we remember that. That way you could possibly talk about that in your outside evidence. Great. Okay, so now we're trying to figure out how these rulers established their authority. So what could we pull from this that tells us how he established his authority? That's what you're looking for in this document. Well, he's threatening war. So he's establishing his authority with force, right? And he backs that up by doing these things: placing strong garrisons in Persia on the frontier, filling the bank of the Euphrates with soldiers, sending frequent messages to the tribes of the Georgians, asking them to take up arms against the Shah. All of that could be used for support. So what you could say in supports is he establishes authority through force, and he tries to intimidate the Shah. Oops, sorry. Intimidate the Shah. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is driving me nuts. This goes over here. Need to put text boxes on here, I guess. Intimidate the Shah into obeying. And then you have to pull something from the document and put it in your own words. So you could say, by placing troops on the border. You could talk about how he fills the banks of the Euphrates with soldiers. He asks the Shah's enemies to go up against him. All right, so you're putting this into your own words, pulling out something from the document that you could support that. Okay, yeah. So gunpowder empires, definitely. These are both gunpowder empires. So, but at the time, the Ottoman Empire just had more power and more ability to force them into obedience. Okay, now the other thing that you need to do from this document is explain. Remember, that's point of view. That could be point of view, audience, purpose, or historical context, right? So I would suggest this one. I thought, in my opinion, it was easiest to do audience, because we know that this guy is the ambassador for the Austrian Empire. So his audience would be the Austrian Empire or the Austrian government. And why is that important to know? Well, it's important because it changes how he's writing things, right? He is basically sending it to the Austrian government to let them know what is going on in the Ottoman Empire. So the audience would be the Austrian, did I spell it right? Austrian government. And why is that important? Well, he's trying to be as precise as possible. He's giving a lot of details. Since it's going to be like a government record, since it's going to the government. You could also do purpose on this, because obviously the purpose would be to inform the government, the Austrian government, about what the Ottomans and the Safavids are doing. So you could do that. And then why is that important that we know? Well, why would that be important? That would be important because, once again, he is being detailed in that description to give it back to the government. Now, you can't use the same why on two of them. So that's why you pick one or the other, unless you can come up with a different why. You could, you could do historical context, whereas you could talk about the Sunni and the Shia split, and you could talk about the context of that and why the Ottoman and the Safavid don't get along. But I would use that for outside evidence, because you can expound on that a little bit more. And since we already know the audience, an audience is pretty easy for this one, then use that for your outside evidence. That's what I would suggest. All right, if any of you guys did this ahead of time and you're checking your work, let me know in the comments if you have something different for any of these things that you want to talk about, okay? All right, let's go on to document 2. This is an excerpt from James the First speech to the English Parliament. Boom. Already we know who it's to, right? So we've got audience is the English Parliament. We'll remember that when we get to explains. It says, the state of monarchy is the supremest thing upon earth. For kings are not only God's lieutenants upon earth and set upon God's throne, but even by God himself they are called gods. There be 3 principal comparisons that illustrate the state of monarchy. One taken out of the word of God, and the 2 other out of the grounds of policy and philosophy. In the scriptures, the kings are called gods, and so their power after a certain relation compared to the divine power. Kings, this should be kings, sorry, I misspelled that. Kings are also compared to fathers of families, for a king is truly parens parete, which is parent of the country, the political father of his people. And lastly, kings are compared to the head of the microcosm of the body of man. All right, so how would we describe that? What is he saying there about kings and where they get their power? What do you guys think? What's the main idea? Very good, Chun. So kings claim to have divine power from God, the divine right. Yes, Anani. The divine right of kings, that whole philosophy, he's basically backing that up, right? So in your description about the main idea, you could say something like, kings are called gods by kings are called gods by God, and they should be respected and obeyed because they're set up by God. Something similar to that, all right? So in our describe, I'm just going to put it like this so that I don't have to worry about the spacing. You could say something like, kings are set up by God. He is claiming the divine right of kings. Yeah, they get their power from God. That's right, Juan. Very good. All right, now we need to pull something from that supports how they establish their power. So how is he establishing power here? You pretty much already answered that question. He establishes it by claiming that God set them up, right? That God set him up. So this would be saying that religion gives him his power, or religion establishes his authority through the divine right of kings. Now, what out of that could you prove that with? And then he says, so when we do document analysis, we describe what the overall doc is saying and put the so what in there. And then after we use outside information. Yeah. And then it doesn't really matter where you put in outside information. I think sometimes it makes sense to bring it after you've talked about the document. But in the describes part, you're just telling the main idea, what the document's about. And the support part is where you're pulling something from that document. So now we have to pull something from this document to prove that that's what he means, that religion basically gives him his power, okay? So you can use any of these things. You could say that scriptures call kings God. You could say that he likens his power to the divine power because God set him up. You could say kings are compared to fathers, and kings are compared to the head of the body, okay? So any of those things would work. I worded it, let's see how I said it. He states that in the Bible, kings are called gods, which leads him to the conclusion that their power is likened to the divine right. So I'm taking what he's talking about, but I'm putting it into my own words, right? So in the Bible, kings are called gods by God, which leads him to believe that their power is likened to divine power. And then he says that they also should be respected like fathers of the people. That would be pulling something from the document to support the fact that religion, this is your topic here. Remember, our last one was force, right? This one is they establish their authority through religion. Okay, so, and then he says, main idea, what the document is about, support, pull something from the document. Yes, 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 yes. Now you're getting it. Absolutely. That's exactly how you do it. And so what I would suggest as you're going through and you're reading those documents, do it right away, put it on your outline. And then when we go back, you already have the stuff that you need to write. You just have to copy it over into an essay. Juan says to compare it for the unicorn point, can we okay, yeah, connect the mandate of heaven. Okay, so that could be an idea. Now, here's the thing, though. We are asked to do the similarity, right? Right here in the prompt. It says we're asked to do the similarity. So for that unicorn point, you actually have to show a difference, right? Because we're already doing the similarity. The divine right of kings and the mandate of heaven are similar, so that wouldn't work to get that unicorn point. But it would work for outside evidence. And what you could do is compare, like you could say the Europeans used the divine right of kings, whereas the Chinese had a similar philosophy, which was the mandate of heaven, and you could start talking about that. So I'm going to put that in here so that you remember that you could talk about that. For the unicorn point, we have to figure out a difference. Okay, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Teen says, so answers may vary if our claims, absolutely, yes, answers are going to vary. There is no right answer, really. Like, you could look at one of these documents and completely not agree with me as long as you can argue it. That's the key. You have to be able to argue whatever you're talking about. Good, you guys are doing it better. I see some progress. Okay, that's awesome. So let's go on with this one for explain. So this one you could do point of view and audience, both of them pretty easily, right? Point of view, it's coming from the king. So remember, for point of view, you ask yourself, who is the author? What does the author believe? And why does he believe it? So the author is King James, and he believes that kings have the same or have divine power like God. Okay. Why does he believe it? That's the important part of point of view, and that's the part that kids often forget to write. He believes this because he's king, right? If he weren't king, if he were a peasant, he may not have this same opinion. He might, but he might not, right? But because he's king, he was raised with these beliefs, and it gives him his power. It benefits him. So of course he's going to believe this. So you're going to put down, he believes this because he is king. And it gives him his power to rule. You could also say that he was raised with these beliefs. Beliefs that we're raised with often stick with us, right? Sometimes we change our mind, but they're definitely going to have an effect on us as adults. Now, we also said we could do audience, remember, because he's talking to the English Parliament. So for audience, you have to say, who is the audience and why is that important? The audience is the English Parliament. Why is it important that we know that? Well, how is he talking to them? Is he giving them a choice? Is his tone like, oh, you can respect me if you want to respect me? No, it's authoritative, right? He's coming across that, hey, this is the way, this is a reminder to you that I have my power from God. So it's important because he is speaking in an authoritarian tone. I don't think I spelled that right. Sorry. To remind them where his power comes from. That's important, right? If he were weak in this tone, then they might not respect him as much. But he's definitely being very powerful in the way that he speaks. Okay. Any questions about that one? Now, you can see the point of view and the audience of those are different. They have different reasons why. So you could use both of those and it would be okay. You just want them to be different. You don't want them to have the same reason. All right, so far we have a document that they establish authority with religion and one that they establish authority through force. I'm going to put that up here so we remember that this one is through force. Actually, it was right here, but it got all messed up because of my typing. So, okay. All right, so let's look at document 3 then and see if any of those line up in our groups. Because remember, we're trying to get 2 different groups. You don't want to do 3 or 4 because that's going to be too much. You won't have enough time. All right. So Wan Ying says, real quick, are you going to have a big review over all the units someday? Yeah, definitely. So Wan Ying, what I've been doing is putting out a review every week. That's been the Amazing Race review videos. So those are the videos that you're going to want to watch. Also on Tuesday mornings, we've been playing Jeopardy at 9:30. So if you can show up for that, that's great. But after we get done, let's see, next week will be the first week that we don't have an Amazing Race unit. So I'll probably start doing like how to organize your notes for each unit so that when you get on the AP test and you see that time frame 1450 to 1750, you can flip real fast to the stuff that we've done over that time frame. Okay. But if you want like a specific unit review, watch those Amazing Race videos. That will help you. And in the links, there's like Amazing Race assignment that I had my kids do that has like vocab words and things like that. So just let me know if you have any questions about that. Okay, let's go on to document 3. Document 3 is Ishmael the First. He is Shah of Safavid. He claims to have descended not only from the 7th Imam, but also to be a reincarnation of pre-Islamic kings and prophets. And this is one of his poems. He says, prostrate thyself. Prostrate means bow down. Pander not to Satan. Adam has put on new clothes. God has come. Okay, so we have 2 groups, religion and force. Which one do you think this one goes with? Anybody? Anybody? Definitely religion. Yeah. So this one would be religion. It's pretty clear that's what it's got to be, right? Fatine, let's see. Can you write a DBQ on similarities and differences? Does it have to be a change or particular? Yeah, so you have to have a claim, yes. And we'll talk about that when we get to our thesis here in a minute. But you look for clues in the prompt. This one was talking about similar methods, so then you know it's comparison. It could be change. It could be continuities. It could be causation. It could be any of those things. You just look for clues within the prompt. Okay, yeah, very good, guys. So this would definitely fall with our religious group. So over here for document 3, I'm going to put in religion so that we remember that's the one, that is what this one is. How could we describe it? What is the main idea of this document? Basically, that he's likened to Adam and that God has returned in him, right? Like he is there because God set him up. Now, Adam is important because he's the first man, even in the Islamic religion. So he's also the first man in the Christian religion and the Jewish religion. That's one thing that they share. But basically, he's saying Adam has put on new clothes. I am just as important as Adam is, okay? So in our description, you could say something like Ishmael, and then you could remind yourself that he is Safavid, likens himself to Adam, and says that God has come to rule the kingdom. Something like that. This one's a little bit harder because it's short. But you're going to probably have some short, oh my goodness. Can't type. Okay. You're going to probably have some short documents on there. All right. So now we have to pull something from that. So he's saying prostrate thyself, bow down. Basically, worship him because he is so important. He is like a reincarnation of all the prophets and kings that have come before him, right? So you could say something like, in the document, he tells people to bow down, honor, and worship him. He believes he is a reincarnation. Maybe change that word so they know that you know what that means. So you could say he believes he is one of the prophets that has returned. And then you could maybe put like reincarnation in parentheses. Let's see what you said. Shun said, does support and describe have to be separate sentences? I would make it separate sentences. That way it is very clear to the reader that you are doing both of them. Okay, so like when you're writing it, you could say something like, in this document, he describes himself as Adam and says that God has come back. He supports the fact that religion establishes his power when he asks the people to bow down and honor and worship him. You know, something like that, okay? You can even use describe and support words. Totally fine. They're not going to count off for that. And as a matter of fact, it shows the reader that that's the part that you're talking about. And trust me, after you have read as many essays as we have to read, sometimes you miss stuff. So it's really good to make it clear to the reader that that's what you're talking about. And then he says, sometimes historical context and outside evidence seem a bit similar. How do we get them clear? Are you talking about the context at the beginning of the DBQ, or are you talking about historical context of a document? And if you're talking about at the beginning, we'll address that. Okay, so explaining this, you could do point of view. Once again, this is very similar to the point of view of a king, right? And what we just wrote for King James. And you could say that he is Shah, so he believes that God put him there. He believes this because of his lineage, which is like the people that went before him, and he wants people to respect him based on this. Okay, so you could write something like that. Remember, who is the author? He is the Shah. What does he believe? And why does he believe that? Lineage is just saying like his family. Okay, so you're talking the historical. Okay, so basically what sets them apart is, like, I would actually say the historical context of this document is, or when we talk about, when we talk about point of view, I would say the point of view of this document is, okay? Make sure that you're very clear about what you're talking about. And then if you're doing outside evidence, you just would like start talking about it. You would just say like, you know, you could even say like outside of the documents, blah, 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 blah. But you wouldn't necessarily have to. You could just start describing it. All right. Very good. We're on a roll. So we've got 2 for religion, 1 for force. Let's see what document 4 is. So document 4 is from the late 17th century. It's a painting by a Flemish artist depicting the 1683 Ottoman siege of Vienna, the last Ottoman incursion into Austrian Empire. So incursion means that they're going into attack, okay? And this is a painting, and you see that they're kind of waiting. They've surrounded Vienna. That's what a siege means, a surrounding of it, not letting anybody in or out, in hopes that Austrian Empire will give up, okay? So which one would this fall under, force or religion? Obviously force, right? So that's what I'm going to put for that one. And then describing this, you would say something like, it is a painting of the siege of Vienna. The Ottoman Empire have surrounded Vienna, and they're waiting for them to surrender, something like that. Now, if you want to make sure that they know that you understand what siege is, I would say Ottomans have surrounded Vienna and they won't let anybody in or out. The whole point of describing and supporting is showing that you know what the document is all about. Now, we're trying to prove force here. So you could say something like, this shows the Ottomans establishing their authority through force as they try and get the Austrian Empire to surrender. Due to the siege, something like that. Hey, Gary, how you doing? Yeah, you've missed quite a bit. We've just looked at the first 4 documents, but you can always rewind it. We'll catch you up. And the documents are down below in the description, and the outline that we use is also down in the description, so you can grab those. Wan Ying says, what if we have no clue about what's going on in the picture during the AP exam? What can we do? Well, try your best to look at the source. They're always going to have a source. They're always going to tell you a little bit about the picture, okay? And actually, this source tells you exactly what is going on in the picture. Now, if the source doesn't tell you, remember, you only have to use 4 of the documents. You don't have to use all 5. So if you absolutely have no clue, you can either make as educated a guess as you can, or you can just skip that document altogether. Okay. Gary says, make something up. Yep. Try to interpret it. Paint it in your own image. Okay, good. Good advice, Gary. Sean says, the depiction of a big army indicates that the Ottomans established their authority through force. That would work. Yep. Claude 1, but relating towards the prompt, we're almost on the 5th one. Claude. Yeah, that's true. So, Gary, what you need to do is just look at the prompt so you know what's going on, and then you'll probably be able to catch up with us. Okay. Juan says, why did this happen in the picture? I don't remember. Okay, so good question, Juan. Why did this happen? So I was thinking, man, this would be good for historical, when we got to explain and we need the historical situation. Why are they fighting? Why are they enemies? Okay, so I had to even look that up to remind myself. Now, you probably won't have time to do this on the AP test, but if you read everything else really fast, you might have time, okay? So let's say that you get to this point and you're like, man, I know they were enemies, but I can't remember why they were enemies. Skip it for that time frame, write everything else, and you can always go back and throw this in after you've looked it up on Google real fast if you have time, okay? But I'm going to fill you in here. So basically, the Ottomans were having a war with the rest of Europe. All right. So remember, the Ottomans are Islamic. The rest of Europe is Christian. And so they're constantly like going back and forth kind of head to head. Okay. So these wars were called the Ottoman Habsburg Wars. And I'm going to write that down for you here. Ottoman versus Habsburg. Not Habsburg. Okay. And basically, the Habsburg is a monarchy represented by several European countries. They later will unify under one monarch in the 1800s. So you can just put down that Habsburg is several European countries kind of all joining up together against the Ottomans. Okay. So from the 1500s to the 1700s, this was going on. And the Ottoman Empire was up against Europe and all these empires, okay? You had the Holy Roman Empire, you had the Spanish, you had Hungary, Poland, which was Polish Lithuania at the time. So you have all these powers that are represented in the Habsburg monarchy. And most of the wars are going to happen in Hungary, Croatia, Serbia, Austria, in that area. The Ottomans are basically a threat to European power, okay? Now, while this is happening, to complicate the matter, the Protestant Reformation is also happening in Europe. So sometimes the Europeans were not as organized against the Ottomans as what they should have been, because they were taking care of their own conflicts, okay? So the Ottomans were also having problems with the Safavid Empire at this time, okay? Hence our first document. So during the 1500s, 1600s, they're fighting. Then they have the Spanish War. And after the Spanish War, the Austrians pretty much take power over the Habsburg area. Okay, so at this time of the siege in 1683, the Austrians were head of that monarchy. So that's why the Ottomans are attacking them, because they want to take that power. Okay, so the Habsburgs are in that area, and they form what's called the Holy League, which is a group of European powers to fight against the Ottomans. Okay, so it's kind of like all over the place for a while, and then they kind of focus it in around the 1700s, late 1600s, 1700s. So they get Hungary back, and they fight against the they fight against the Ottoman Empire in the Turkish Wars. The Europeans win. So what you need to say is around the time of the siege, the Europeans were fighting the Ottomans, and they win. So the siege is unsuccessful. Ottomans participate in this war on the European side. So, okay, so the Austrians are on the European side, and they win. So now there's going to be tension between the Ottomans and the Austrians for a while. However, what's really interesting is that they eventually ally for World War I. So despite tension between the Ottomans and the Austrians for a while, they eventually team up in World War I. Okay, so this would be the historical situation of that document. Now, one important thing that we did not add here is the reason they don't get along is because of religion, right? Austrians and the rest of Europe is Christian, whereas the Ottoman Empire is Muslim. So you'd want to put that in here, and you'd say something like Ottoman, Muslim, or Islamic, and the Europeans or Christian. That gives you some historical context of that document, why they're fighting in the first place. All right, let's see what you guys said. Didn't they fail in the end? Yeah, so, yep, Gary, the Safavid conflict is because of the Sunni and Shia. That's correct. 15 got it. Okay, so is the explain gesture? No, explain is different than outside evidence. Explain is going to be point of view, audience, historical situation, or purpose. Outside evidence is outside evidence. How do you relate historical context to the argument? We're going to talk about that in just a minute, Shun. Haven't gotten there yet. Just talk about the sport. Okay, so this is not historical context, Shun. That's going to be at the beginning. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. This is different. This is another part of the explain or the contexting of the document that you can do. There are 4: point of view, historical situation, which is this one, audience, and purpose. Okay. Okay. So that gives you a little bit of background. Basically, Ottoman, Muslim, European Christians, they're going head to head, and that's what takes you into this whole siege of Vienna. Okay. Long description for what you really needed to know, but I just thought that was so super interesting. And actually, some historians believe that the victory over the Ottoman Empire was the turning point when the Ottoman Empire was doomed to fail. So take that for what it's worth. Okay, now let's go on to document 5. Shun says, yeah, sorry, I was talking about the one our teacher called historical context. Sure. So Shun, I'll talk about historical context in just a minute. That's going to be at the very beginning, okay? No problem. No need to apologize. Oh, okay. So your teacher calls it context at the beginning and historical context for this, right? Is that what you're saying? Okay, that makes sense. And you can call this historical context. It's basically the same thing. I think it just calls it historical situation on the rubric. So as not to get confused, that we just use that, or I use that. But it's basically the same thing. Your teacher is on point with the historical context because it means the same thing. Okay, don't know why that's giving me a big cursor. Okay. All right, Shun, awesome. I just saw that and I got a bit confused. Okay, no problem. I mean, everybody kind of does a little bit different. Everybody kind of uses different words. Totally okay. All right, let's look at document 5. This is an excerpt from the Sacred Edict of the Qing Dynasty, a set of moral and government instructions enacted by the imperial authority, beginning with the emperor. I'm not going to pronounce that because I'll get it wrong. For use in local rituals conducted throughout the Qing Empire. So this is a sacred edict or a law, basically, that they're giving out to the people. Who would be your audience? The people. You got it right. So we could definitely do audience on this one. We'll have to remember. You could probably do point of view on this as well. We'll see. Okay, so number 1 says, and remember, we're looking for whether it goes with force or religion. Number 1 says, esteem most highly filial piety and brotherly submission in order to I think this is supposed to be find maybe, in order to do important, I don't know if that's a typo or not. I have to look that up. In order to do importance the human moral relations. I think there might be a word in there that I'm missing. Okay, either way, we've got filial piety and brotherly submission. What does that go with? NNE, religion through Confucius ideals. Yeah, so Confucianism is technically a philosophy. It's not technically a religion. We could probably throw them together and argue them together. So definitely filial piety. Let's look and see if we can find some more. It says cultivate peace and concord in your neighbors in order to prevent quarrels and litigations. Give importance to agriculture and sericulture in order to ensure sufficiency of clothing and food. Foster colleges and schools in order to give the training of the scholars a proper start. Instruct sons and younger brothers in order to prevent them from doing wrong. And promptly remit your taxes. There's something the government wants you to do in order to avoid being pressed for payment, right? So basically do all of these things because of this important part, right? Filial piety, brotherly submission. So yes, it's definitely religion. Good job, guys. You're picking these out really good. So over here for document 5, you're going to say that this goes with religion. Now, since we know that Confucianism isn't a religion, we're going to also put philosophy beside that so that you can remember that in your thesis. Now, describing. What's the main idea? This is a set of moral instructions, sorry. Put out to the people from the Qing dynasty of how they are supposed to behave. Basic, just main idea of this document. Now, describing, I believe you do that 3 times. I would do it 4 times so that you have an extra. So if you're getting to this point and you're starting to run out of time, just skip the describe and go on to the supports, okay? We'll have to do a practice one sometime, and you can time yourself. I think they're going to come out with one of those real soon, and then you can kind of see where you're at so that we can help time that a little bit better. Okay, so support. How could we support this? Well, basically, Qing Dynasty is using Confucian philosophy to establish their power by asking the people to have morals due to filial piety and submit to authority, right? So you could say like Qing Dynasty. And I'm just abbreviating here a little bit. Now, I'm writing in full sentences here, but when you're actually doing this, what I would suggest is just put it in bullet points so that you can put it in sentences later and you're not using so much of your time. I'm putting it in full sentences just so that you guys know how to write this. What do you mean, and more just for security? I don't know. Maybe there's some up here. Wait, so you don't have to describe all of them. No. So yeah, exactly. More for security. Yeah. You need to do at least 4. That way you have an extra. But if you have time, 5 is better. So Shun's right. Why does YouTube say the chat is disconnected? I don't know. The chat's still coming up for me. That's weird, Wan Ying. Not sure. I can still see it. Would you suggest we type or write? Well, I would probably... I don't know, Anani. I would practice and see which way you're faster. So, you might be faster at typing it, but I don't know. For me personally, I would probably write it and then I would use it to type my essay. Oh, you can't see other people's conversations. That's weird, Wan Ying. Are you on your school computer? Maybe that's why. I don't know. That's weird. I've never had that happen before. Okay, so we can also pull out that they should be peaceful to their neighbors, and he encourages them to pay their taxes. Okay, now that's important because the government obviously wants them to pay their taxes so that the government has money, right? So that definitely ties to establishing their authority. That's really weird, Wan Ying. I don't know why that's happening. I'll try to figure it out. I'll make sure and read their comments, though, so that you don't miss them. Okay, so explaining... Remember, our options are point of view, audience, purpose, and historical situation. You could say point of view, it's coming from the Qing dynasty. What do they believe? They believe that people should be respectful of the government because of Confucian philosophy. Why do they believe this? Because they're the government. They want to establish their authority. They want the people to listen to them. You could also do audience and say that the audience is the people of China. And the Qing dynasty, got to type right. The Qing dynasty wants them to obey. So they are using Confucian philosophy to justify and convince the people why they should obey. And notice that they're kind of doing this subtly, like they're talking about filial piety and brotherly submission. But down here, they don't say, remit your taxes so the government can pay for stuff. They say, oh, remit your taxes because it's going to be better for you. You won't be pressed into payment. And then like up here, give importance to agriculture. Make sure that you have enough food because otherwise you won't have enough, right? So you could say that they are kind of they're kind of wording it subtly. Subtly. I don't know. Subtly. So that there we go. No E. So that people will hear that they want them to do this because of Confucian, not because the government commands it, right? Okay, something like that. All right. Shun says, wait, isn't filial piety? Yeah, it is between the parent and the child, but it's also between the government and the people. And it could be between the father and the son. It's basically anyone that's higher than you, you need to have filial piety. Gary said, you said audience was nice for this. Yep, you can do audience. You can do point of view. Now, point of view is going to be a very similar reason. So I wouldn't do both. I just do one or the other. Thank you, Anani. The Wing Dynasty, yeah. That's the Wing Dynasty is at Buffalo Wild Wings. All right, that's where you go for the Wing Dynasty. Okay, Juan says filial piety is also between kings and people. Yep, Juan, you're absolutely correct. Gary says, so from what I know, you don't need to sound like a college professor. Rather, they just need to understand what you're trying to say. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, you may not end up getting the complexity point if you don't like word it beautifully, but you know, that's just one point. If you get all the other ones, then you're golden. You're going to at least get a 5. I'm sure you will. Well, I shouldn't say that because who knows with the College Board, but probably I will say that probably if you get all the other points, then you'll still get a 5. So, and you can get all the other points without having to sound like a college professor. Just try your best. I mean, that's all you can do really. And really hit each one of these points. So I think somebody was asking before, well, can we say the document describes blah, blah, blah? Absolutely. I mean, make it clear for the person who's reading it. Don't make them guess. Also, you want to prove to them that you know what this document is about. If they read your describe and supports and they have no clue what you're trying to say the document is about, then you won't get those points. That's why putting it in your own words is so imperative, because it shows that you know what the document means. Okay? All right, moving right along, let's group our documents. So we have 2 groups, religion and force. And we said that the religion philosophy group, I'm going to put philosophy here too, was 2, 3, and 5. And the ones with force were the other ones, 1 and 4. Right? And the topic is religion and philosophy. Topic over here is force. Now we need our thesis. Now remember, if you're trying to go for that complex understanding point, you also need a difference. So we need similarities and we need a difference. We also want our time period. So you could say something like rulers during the period of 1450 to 1750. I'm going to leave it right there and see if anybody already has a thesis. If you already have a thesis written, or if you think you can write one, put it in the comments and let's see how you do. And Annie says, I think I'm going to fail. Annie, come on now. You can at least do the describes part. You can at least do outside evidence. And that would be 1, 2. That could be 4 points right there. And I think that you're good enough with point of view or audience. I think you could do that. So you're not going to completely fail. Okay. I got faith in you, girl. I got faith in you. And you just got to keep practicing. Juan says, we don't have that in our document outline. What do you mean? You don't have this, this part? If you're looking at the documents, then it's not going to be there. But it should be there if you're looking at the organizer. Let me know if it's not. If not, just add it in, Juan. No biggie. Okay, Gary says, I'm confident, but only because both times I've taken the practice DBQ, I've finished with sufficient time remaining. Good. Now, if you really want to feel confident, what you need to do is email me the ones that you've practiced. Unless you've already had your teacher check them, email them and I'll see how you did. And then you can tell us whether you're confident, okay? Shun says, oh, wow, I needed a full 45 minutes. Trust me, Shun, I needed a full 45 minutes too. I tried doing one of these just because I wanted to see how difficult it was, and it's difficult in 45 minutes. How long did you write? Gary says, you won't completely fail. Hey, listen, Gary, it's all about the little bits of points that you can get, you know? Gary says he's not confident anymore. No, seriously, Send me your DBQ that you've practiced. Send me the prompt and the DBQ so that I can check it out. Okay, I want to see how you did. Maybe you did better than what you're thinking or what I'm thinking. Okay, because you could really have nailed it. All right, NNE says rulers during the period of 1450 to 1750. Let me see if I can put this on here because I think I can't. I think I can put these on the screen. There we go. Boom. All right, NNE, you're famous now. You're on the screen, girl. Okay, here we go. Rulers during the period of 1450 to 1750 implemented tactics to outline their authority through the usage of religion and philosophical practices and through forcing competitors. Okay, all right, I like it. I like it. Okay, so yeah, that's good. That could be a, okay, now I don't know how to get it off. Okay, there we go. That could be a thesis, yes. So I'm going to move mine up here so that you can see it. Oh, and then I'm going to put hers back on the screen because once again, no right answer, okay? Either one of these will work. And then he says, I've only done one in class and that was in December, but I've been practicing online since. Okay, that's good. Practice is what makes perfect. Sean said, our teacher gave us European history prompt for a quiz. Okay, not bad. How'd you do on it, Sean? Let me know. All right, so NNEs is good. You could also say something like they established their authority similarly through the use. Make sure that you have similarly in there because that shows comparison language. Through the use of justifying their power through religion or philosophy. So NNE, I would just say make sure you throw similarly in there. That way it ties it to the prompt. Or by the use of force. I think I'm not an English teacher. My spelling is not great tonight. Okay. Now, if we want to show complexity, we need a difference, right? So I was thinking that, are there any rulers that gained respect from their people without using religion or philosophy? Did any of them do it differently? Think about Akbar. Do you guys remember Akbar? What was special about him? How did he rule with religion? What did he do? What did he say? I'll give you guys a minute to think about that while I type this. Okay, so let's see what you have. And then he says, ours was in Latin America revolutions. Okay, losing the thesis point is so sad. Okay. Sean, Russia. Okay. Can you think of a specific way in Russia that they ruled differently, not by force or religion? Very good, Gary. He was very accepting, and then he says he's religiously tolerant. Absolutely. So he is not using religion to force people. As a matter of fact, he's letting them choose whatever religion they want to be. So you could say some rulers differed in how they established authority with the people by being religiously tolerant instead of forcing the religion on the people. And when you get to that part, you could talk about Akbar. Can you think of anybody else? He was a famous Mongol. Good, Muhammad. Yes, acceptance of any religion. Good to see you here, Muhammad. Gary says he allowed Hindus to continue their practice in order to prevent opposition against his rule. Yep. Peter the Great adopted Western ways. He didn't have to wear cultural attire. He learned the economic sectors of Europeans. That's true. But how did Peter the Great get the people to accept Western ways? That's important. Genghis Khan is the only Mongol Gary knows. Genghis Khan is the one I was talking about, Gary. Look at that. You knew and you didn't even know you knew. I love it. Okay, so yeah, Genghis Khan rules with religious tolerance, and that's how, you know, he gets a lot of the respect of the people. Now, he would be in a different time period, but you could throw him in here as long as you can argue it. Shun says Peter the Great was not so Peter the Great forces the people, right, to go to Western ways. So that probably wouldn't be a great example here when you're talking about differences, because that would be more up here by like using force, not necessarily force against other empires, but forcing the people into doing that. So you could possibly throw that in as some outside evidence, but I wouldn't use it as that unicorn point. Okay, Grace, how's it going, Grace? Would you also be able to look over my DBQs? Yeah, sure, send them to me. Grace says, I'm self-studying and could really use some advice. Absolutely. I'm a dork about this stuff. Let me post my email address down here for you guys. If you want me to look at any DBQ, go ahead and send it to me. Make sure and send me the actual DBQ that you looked at as well, so that I can see the documents. So yeah, and Grace, also I have posted a unit video for each one of the units that's going to be on the test. Those are great for reviewing the content. If they're under Amazing Race, Unit 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 6. So you might want to check those out since you're self-studying. And we also play Jeopardy on Tuesday mornings, so you're more than welcome to join us for that. That's been a lot of fun. As the test gets closer to, I'm going to put some more stuff out there and do more stuff for you guys. So Muhammad, if we talked about Akbar, would that be outside evidence? Well, so Muhammad, it could be outside evidence, but if you're trying for the unicorn point, okay, that very last point, which is complexity, that means that since this is a similarity essay, if you talk about a difference too, then you could potentially get that point. So that's what we're using for our difference. Therefore, since we're using it as our difference, you can't use it as outside evidence. If you want to use it for outside evidence instead, totally fine, okay? But you can't double dip. Juan, how can we support because we don't have any docs to support? Okay, so this difference doesn't have to be supported by docs. That can be supported just from your own brain, okay? We'll talk about that when we get to the writing. Gary says, oh yeah, Mongols hadn't really had their own religion. Well, they kind of did. They kind of had, it was more of like a nature type religion, but yeah, you're right. They did assimilate a lot. And Grace says, thank you. I've seen your videos already. Oh, great. Thank you, Grace. I appreciate it. Just wanted to make sure you knew that they were there for helping you through this. Okay. I know this online learning stuff can be challenging, so I want to make sure that you guys have all the support you need. Shun says, if we only talk about Akbar, would that be too small to get the point? Not necessarily. If you do a really good job and you connect really good examples, then you could possibly get the point. Wang Ying says, are we writing? Okay, no. So I'm not going to write the whole DBQ with you live. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about context, and then I'll give you the opportunity to write it on your own, and you can send it to me, and I'll give you feedback. But before we go, I will tell you a little bit about like how to use this outline that you can write it with. Okay. Okay, because we already been on here an hour, and I don't know about y'all, but I'm tired. Okay, so context. You need at least 2 to 3 events. I would try to go with 3 events that are going to lead up to this. So think about what happens before 1450 to 1750. What happens that leads up to the Ottoman, the Safavid, the divine right of kings in Europe. Throw out some things that you think you could write about in context. I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to say, because you guys talked about this at the very beginning, and you said that gunpowder. So you could talk about like gunpowder spreads. I could spell it right. Gunpowder spreads from China to the rest of the world. It makes it possible for these empires. And then you could talk about, you know, connect that to the Ottoman and the Safavid. Yeah, I mean, Sean, 45 minutes is going to go really quick. You're absolutely right about that. But you have to remember too, like we're talking a lot in between. So all of that won't be there. So, I mean, you guys should be able to do the majority of this. And I wouldn't stress about certain things, certain points, and I'll talk about that here at the end as soon as we get through context. Anybody else have some context? Oh, spread of religions. Sure, yeah. So you can talk about the spread of religions on the trade routes. Specifically, if you want to tie it to your documents, talk about like the spread of Islam on the Trans-Saharan. You could talk about the Ottoman Empire taking over Constantinople and changing it to Islamic instead of Christian. That was a pretty big thing. Okay, so Gary says, I'll do this DBQ tomorrow. May I ask where you got it from just so I can do more, especially because the board won't open the new ones until the 4th. Okay, so this one I kind of hodgepodge together. I normally use the AMSCO book, but I didn't really like the one that was in the AMSCO book this unit, so I just grabbed some documents and used a prompt that, I kind of like changed the prompt a little bit. So this one, it really isn't from any book, but it's down in the description below so you can access it there. Okay, and then we need one more thing. Yeah, Sean, normally I use the AMSCO, but this last one that they had in the AMSCO, I felt like some of the documents were like really long and contradictory to each other. And so I just changed it up a bit. Yeah, AMSCO book. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, AMSCO book's good. Also, the Strayer book, I don't know if you guys use that one, but that's good too. Okay, one other thing that you could talk about, the fall of Rome leads to needing protection, right, in Europe. And so what happens is they set up the feudalism. And that's where the divine right of kings comes from. Now, this is a lot. So if you have this much information, then just use 2 of these things, because like the gunpowder, you can expand on that a little bit, and you can also expand on this one. So if you've got like 4 or 5 sentences for context, that's good. The only thing you need to remember, though, is to connect it to the prompt. That part's really important. So for example, this one would be really easy to connect to the prompt, because the reason that they can use force is because they have gunpowder, right? So when you're connecting that to the prompt, you could say, because the gunpowder spreads, this enables the empires to establish their authority through force. And then somehow you have to connect to the religion, right? So you could say religion becomes very important to the people and also allows for them to have more respect for the kingdom or something like that. Okay, just make sure that you don't go from context right into your thesis. Have some kind of like transition sentence there that connects the 2 together. Then on your chart here, we have outside evidence, but we already kind of put that in our outline, so I wouldn't worry about filling that out. And then here are some reminders. So now when you go back to write this, you're going to write the context first, connect it to your prompt or your thesis, and then write your thesis. Now, if you look at this thesis and break it down, you have your topic sentences already. One of your topic sentences, justifying their power through religion and philosophy, right? And another one is by force. So your first topic sentence would literally be, rulers during the period of 1450 to 1750 established their authority similarly through the use of justifying their power through religion and philosophy. You're just pulling that from your thesis. Then you're going to start talking about your documents. Don't forget, you have to name the documents. So you're going to go back up here to your outline, And the first one was document 2, right? So you're going to say document 2 describes how kings are set up by God. Basically, James is claiming the divine right of kings. He supports this idea through saying that religion establishes this authority because the Bible calls the kings gods, and that leads him to believe that he has the divine power of God. He also says that kings should be respected like fathers of people, therefore giving them that divine authority. Okay, so you see how I just used that outline that we had already. Even if this was in bullet points, I would just put it into sentences. Then I would go right into the point of view, and I would say, document 2's point of view is written by King James. He believes he's king and he has the divine power. He believes this because it gives him the power to rule, and he was raised on these beliefs. The audience of document 2 is the English Parliament. Because the English Parliament is the audience, the king is speaking very authoritarian, and he reminds them of his power. Then you talk about the outside evidence, and you'd say, like, similarly to the divine right of kings, the Chinese had a philosophy called the mandate of heaven, and you would take a couple of sentences to explain that. Then you would go on to your next document, okay? So that's how you're going to use this outline to basically write your DBQ. If you're a fast typer, you could take 20 minutes to do this outline really well, and then you'd have 25 minutes to type it. But you have to be a fast typer. Otherwise, you might need like 30 minutes to type it. Okay, so NNE says, since the contextualization, this is an introduction. Yeah. I would start with your contextualization. I would put a sentence to tie it to your thesis and then write your thesis. Then start with your topic sentence for your first paragraph. Go through each one of your documents, and then your topic sentence for your second paragraph. Go through each one of your documents, and then sprinkle your outside evidence somewhere in between. If you have time, then at the very end is where you can put that difference, and you can talk about Akbar for your unicorn point, but you may not have time. And that's okay if you don't. Okay, could we talk about the Ottomans slowly pushing further and further into the Balkan region? You could. That could be outside evidence. Absolutely. And then he says, how would you close each paragraph in relation to the thesis? You don't really need to because you don't get any points for that. So I would suggest not even waste your time. As long as you have that topic sentence there that connects to your thesis so that the reader knows that that's what you're talking about in that paragraph, that topic sentence will pretty much wrap up that paragraph for you. Claude 1 says, so you need to describe at least 4, have analysis for 2, or at least 2 outside evidence, and have at least 4 documents into the document. Yeah, if you look up the rubric, it'll be, so the one that I really like is the Tom Ritchie one. Tom Ritchie is awesome. If you guys are taking a push next year, definitely check him out. He's got a really good YouTube channel. So if you look up Tom Ritchie's 2020 A Push DBQ, it's the same one as it is for world history. So I would have one of these like printed out or accessible when you're taking your test, but describing 2 documents, supporting at least 4, and explaining 2. Now, if you have time, I would suggest putting an extra in there for some backup so that you make sure and get those points. Good, Gary. 100 words per minute. That's awesome. Gary says, so you would suggest to make something like that, but on a worse scale and then just write it. Yeah, so the better that you do this organizer, I mean, this is pretty much your essay right here. You just got to put it into essay form. Shun says, I'm a fast typer, but a slow thinker, so fast typing is useless. Well, it's okay, Shun. Like, I really think that you guys are putting forth the effort here, and you are practicing, and that's definitely going to help. So just hang in there. Juan says, can we use the audience or the same explained for each document? Yes, absolutely. I just switch it up sometimes because sometimes it's easier to do audience. Sometimes it's easier to do point of view. That's why I switch it up. Enemy says, okay, thanks for all this and the advice you give. You're so welcome, Enemy, no problem. All right, so before we leave here, what I would suggest that you do, take this outline and time yourself. See how long it takes for you to type what you have put in an outline into an essay, okay? Now, we know that it probably took us about 30 minutes if we would take out all the chit-chat in between to do this organizer. But if you can type this up into an essay in like 20 minutes, then you know that you don't have to shave too much time off of what you write the outline in, okay? So go ahead and do that. And then you can send it to me in an email if you'd like, and I'll look it over and give you some feedback. If the feedback is, actually, you know what? Type it in a Google Doc, just like I've got this here, so that you can share it with me. When you share it, make sure that you give me permission to comment, like right here, to like put in my email address, and then give me permission right here to comment, and I'll just comment directly on your DBQ so that you know what parts I'm talking about. That would be the easiest. So if you want me to check it over, that's what you can do. Just email it to me and I'll do that for you. Okay, let me see. Let me make sure I didn't miss any. Juan says we only have to do analysis for 2. Okay, yeah. So Juan, the reason your teacher is making you do it for all of them is for practice. If you have time, do it for all of them, dude. Like, get as many in there as you possibly can, because it's a possibility that you might do one wrong. And if you've got some extra in there, then you'll still get that point. Gary says, yeah, I know for sure that there are a bunch of people that won't begin studying until the day before the documents. That's crazy. Clearly, they don't care about their grade. You definitely have to practice. You definitely have to study for this. This is just, it's not something that comes easy to everybody. And Juan says, that's me. Well, Juan, you're here though, so maybe it's not you. And Annie, yes, you've got this. I believe in you all. I think that you can do this. And here's the other thing, like I was telling Annie, even if you get on there and you're like, I have no idea what this prompt is asking me, then just try to do the simple stuff. Try to write some outside evidence that goes with that topic. I mean, all of you knew outside evidence that went with this topic. So write that, and then tie it to the topic. And then you could also, what's the other one? Context. You all did context pretty well. Write that. Even if you can't come up with a thesis, just write what you know, and it'll at least get you 4 or 5 points. And you never know, that could turn out to be a 3 in the long run. We just don't know until everybody takes this exam. All right, and Gary says, yeah, I would say simply because we're a parent shows that we're putting in forth effort. I think so. Yeah, I absolutely do. And like I said, like, you guys have done really good with the outside evidence. You can even do the explaining part. You've done well with that kind of stuff. So don't think that all is lost, okay? Don't think that all is lost. If the test was 3 hours long, I could get 10 points. Yes, Sean. But it's not going to be 3 hours long. I'm so sorry. Bye, Wan Ying. Go eat. Definitely go eat. We're done. We've wrapped it up. If you want to write this and have me check it, feel free to send it to me, girl. I will check it out for you. Enjoy your dinner, and we'll talk to you later. Make sure and join in on Jeopardy if you want to. We'd love to have you. My one student, Ethan, he needs some competition. He's like really good, and my other students get so mad at him. So he needs some competition. All right, Annie, outside evidence relates to the docs, right? As context is in the paragraph and is different from historical situation. Yeah, so the outside evidence can be anything that relates to the topic. So for example, we've talked about Ottoman Empire, Safavids, Siege of Vienna, the Qing dynasty. It can be anything related to any of that, as long as you tie it in. Juan says it's scary how the test is based on one essay, and that determines the whole year. It definitely is. You're right. It is scary. But you know, it is what it is under these conditions. And Gary says, I mean, Juan, most exams are like that. I don't like the system at all. We should move to Finland. Yeah, I've often thought about that. I think I'd like teaching in Finland for sure. Sean said, I am eating breakfast and watching this. Oh, that's awesome. Sean, tell us again where you're at. I think I might have missed it. Are you over? Let's see. If you're eating breakfast, you got to be on the other side of the world, right? Let us know. You only have 15 minutes for your Chinese AP test? What? Oh, you're in China. Okay. Okay, cool. Well, welcome. Welcome, my dear. She's eating breakfast. Are you a day? Yeah, you'd be a day ahead of us. It's like you have a time machine, Sean. You're like ahead of us. Like, you're like the time machine teacher because I have a time machine. You guys don't know about the time machine. I'll have to do one of those videos for you. Actually, I have one from a while back. It's about the 1920s, and the time machine is in that one. So you might want to check that one out. All right. NNE says, I'm about to go. Good night, NNE. Thank you for joining in. Yes. Is it 9:24 already? Oh, no, wait. You're on a different time. Okay. I was like, man, we've been on here for a while. Okay. And then Gary says, I'm pretty sure Finnish teachers are paid as much as doctors. Yeah, that'd be nice. I could definitely stimulate the economy with that kind of money. Actually, I think probably what I'd do is take my students on trips. That's what I would do with my money. I keep telling them if I ever get rich on YouTube, that's what I'm going to do. So now you guys are a part of that. You're a part of the Time Machine family because you've subscribed. So if we ever take a Time Machine teacher trip off of YouTube money, you guys might get an invite. Wouldn't that be fun? I could actually meet you in person. All right, guys. Juan says it's 6:25 here in Santa Monica. Well, you still have a pretty good evening to go. It's dark here. It's 8:26 in Houston. All right, guys. So I'm going to log off of here. And if you decide that you want to write this DBQ, feel free to send it to me. I will definitely check it for you and give you some feedback. Don't forget to put it into a Google Doc so that I can just put the comments right in there. Also, if you want to play Jeopardy with us, we're playing Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. We'll probably add some evening games as well. So just stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe and hit those notifications so that you won't miss it. And before you leave, hit that thumbs up because it's been a good night. I'm very proud of you guys and all your hard work. And Gary says, I didn't only just subscribe, but I hit the notification bell too. Gary, that's why you are quickly becoming one of my favorites, let me tell you. All right, you are so welcome, guys. Sean, have an awesome day. I hope your breakfast was amazing. And I will see you guys next time. Good night and good morning to you, Sean.